Hey everyone, Dashian Miller here, and we're here with our this week's Whiteboard Wednesday. So hopefully you've been able to make it, and we're all good. And if not, you're probably watching the recording. So we're just going to jump right in. Today's session is actually a part two to something we started last week, right? So if you haven't seen that, it's okay. They can be used as independent kind of things, but just know that they go together, right? So in the last episode, last week, right, we took a look at defending against a knife-wielding attacker. So we took a look at psychology of dealing with those kind of things, right? So again, if you haven't seen it and that's something of interest to you and you want to learn how to not get stabbed or how to neutralize the advantage that a knife-wielding attacker has, if you don't have one, then you want to go ahead and take a look at that lesson. What we're going to do this class is flip things, right? So what I'm taking a look at is we have a knife, right? That doesn't mean that he doesn't, right? That means that we now have to look at the opposite side of things when it comes to knife defense. So we're going to be talking about some psychology things, but a lot of what we're going to be looking at is how we should be looking at our training, right? Because what ends up happening, right? One of the biggest problems is that people tend to lump everything together. It's kind of like martial arts instructors that, they put up flyers, or they put up a website or whatever, and they say the same thing that everybody else is saying, right? I know the graphics are different or whatever. They throw a bunch of Japanese around, but they use general terms, right? So they might teach that, or they might say that we teach weapons. We might teach traditional weapons. We teach modern weapons. What does that mean, right? And even if they are attracting somebody who wants to learn how to use weapons, why? Because there's different groups, right? There's the group that just wants to learn how to use it because of the artistry of it, right? Or the skill set or whatever. Other people want to learn it because it's about self-defense. And believe it or not, while a lot of people will say that they want to learn to do things based on self-defense, just because they say so doesn't make it true, right? Same thing, right? Some people might want to learn it because they're a weapons fanatic, right? And it's one more thing they can add to their collection. No one is right or wrong, right? But when I do different programs or seminars or whatever, they tend to be themed and they tend to be attractive to certain types of people, okay? So we're going to be coming at this from a couple of different angles, but again, it's about us having a knife. So one of the things, the primary thing we're going to take a look at is what I call my 4 pillars of training. It's a training model, and there are 4 aspects of the training. So we're going to take a look at those and what would be included or what that type of training would look like. Because again, just like the martial arts instructor who's just using general terms like, we teach Bujinkan, we teach Ninjutsu, we teach Taekwondo. What does that mean, right? How is that affecting whatever? What will it give me? But even beyond that, it'd be nice if we, knew head kind of stuff, right? So it's the same thing with knife defense, right? What kind of knives are we talking about? What kind of situations are we talking about, right? If I just say knife defense, am I defending against somebody armed with a knife? Am I defending with a knife? Are we talking about knife on knife? So we're going to take a look at a couple of different things. And same thing with training, right? People tend to just kind of do the same thing, right? Where it's, one-on-one and whatever, right? But there's lots of things that we can do to kind of break things out and get really, really good at different aspects. And that's what we're going to take a look at with these 4 pillars, okay? Because if we just, one of the biggest complaints that I get from people about online training or being a solo training student, which I've been my entire life. Does that mean that I haven't gone to seminars? No. Does that mean I haven't gone to Japan? No, lots, right? Does it mean, no, it means that I've been on my own and have had to create my own experiences. I've had to do these things, right? But one of the biggest complaints that people get is they don't have any training partners, right? So how do I practice? I can't do this art if I don't have any partners. Really? Bullshit, right? So we're going to take a look at this 4 pillars. And I've done this before. You might have seen a different episode that we did where I looked at 4 pillars based on unarmed. We're going to take a look at it from a knife perspective, right? Because we have it for sword, we have it for long staff, we have it for all these things, right? So we're going to take a look at that. And then we're going to break out one of these aspects, right? Or one part of one of these pillars and take a look at that more to understand how we can gain more flexibility with a knife as a weapon, right? Being the weapon wielder, right? To just give ourselves the greatest advantage possible, which is really what training's about, right? I just did a presentation at a local school that has these little days where they kind of bring specialists like me in, whether it's scouting or soccer camp or whatever, right? Give students a chance to try different things. And so after the presentation was over, the teacher that was in charge kind of came up and said, I really think that I can handle myself, but, getting into a program like yours, I'm assuming that would allow me to do it more easily without as much wear and tear on me. And I said, see, that's the thing. Anybody that's got their heart in it, right? Unless they're going to fold, right? Anybody can fight like a caveman, right? Anybody can get involved in that kind of training where I'm willing to take a shot to get a shot, right? And just that raw brutality. Anybody can do that, right? But what you're betting on is things like hope and luck and that your body can take more than his can, or that you get better shots in that shut him down quicker than he gets in on you. And it's just this trade-off, right? What we're really looking at with our training is how do we produce the results that we need as effectively, efficiently, and powerfully as possible with the least amount of energy expenditure, because that's the rule of survival, right? Energy conservation. Least amount of energy expenditure and the least amount of wear and tear on us in the process. That's the big thing that training gives us, right? So anyway, so let's jump into this, and we're going to start with these 4 pillars, right? So, let's use red, okay? So 4 pillars of knife training, okay? Yep, I know, sloppy writing. Anyway, right? So 4 pillars, right? So again, just like I described in the past, the reason I call these pillars is if we think of a gazebo, the Parthenon in Greece, whatever, right? We've got these, I'm just going to do 4 because that's what we're going to be talking about, right? We have these 4 pillars, right? Post, whatever you want to call them, supports that are holding up the roof, okay? I know the Parthenon has way more than 4, right? But the whole idea here is this is your skill and ability, right? This is mastery. This is your expertise. This is everything together, right? And one of the biggest mistakes that people have is they keep trying to do everything. Somebody comes to me and says, what should I be working on? I said, what are you working on? Right? Well, pretty much everything, which again is bullshit because no one can work on everything at any given time, right? Working on everything is usually a cop-out. And at worst is a freaking is a way for ego to say I'm working on things, but I'm not really, not seriously and not at all, right? So you're not, right? Or it means I don't know what to work on, so I'm just kind of doing something, right? It's like the hamster on the wheel. I'm running my ass off, but I'm not going anywhere, right? But I feel good because I'm doing something, right? Yeah, but what's your baseline, right? What are you working on? Why are you working on it? And what results do you want to be producing at the other end after the process? Well, I want to know stuff. Well, fantastic. You don't need me. Just keep working on whatever you're doing. You're going to know stuff, okay? Or keep jumping around YouTube. You'll learn stuff, okay? So anyway, here's this idea, right? So the pillar concept that I use is these are the critical pieces that support this, okay? And if we're looking at it from the top down, right? We've got our roof, right? Or this stuff, right? And then we've got these 4 pillars, right? That are holding up the roof. I guess this should be more solid since I'm looking at it from the top, right? Got this roof, right? And we've got these 4 pillars, okay? So each pillar represents a certain type of training, a certain aspect of training, okay? And they all kind of work together to hold this thing up, right? So here's the question, right? What if we're missing one of these pillars, right? What if we're not working on that piece, okay? Well, I don't know, 3 might hold it up, right? I mean, we might be crafty about things and shift this baby over here to center, right? Whatever, okay? And as long as the right conditions don't come along, wind, storm, whatever, right? Earthquake. as long as certain conditions don't come along that require the product of that type of training, we should be good, right? But again, now we're hoping for luck that things don't happen that way, right? But what if I'm missing two? Could be missing this one, could be missing that one, whatever, right? It gets more and more tenuous, right? I know it's a big word, right? It gets more risky, okay? But that's what people tend to do. People tend to just do one type of training. You imagine what the Parthenon would look like? Would you imagine what a gazebo or a tent or whatever would look like? It would just have one stake, okay? Friggin' roof would be all hanging down and whatnot. It wouldn't be supporting anything, right? But this pillar is, well, we'll get to that when we do it, all right? So let's take a look at these 4 pillars, right? So now I'm going to put numbers in these things. This is not order of importance. I just want to be able to reference them, okay? And hopefully you can see this on the screen that you're using, especially for those of you that are watching on your iPhone or your Android or whatever, okay? All right, so the only one that I would say is number one is the first one I'm going to be talking about. But again, each one is important, right? It's a different aspect of training, okay? So the first pillar is familiarization. Actually, it's weapon familiarization, okay? So when we talk about knife defense, yes, there's some generalities, right? Like grip and certain types of protective postures, drawing the weapon to get it out under pressure, right? The law, right? The legalities of using a knife for defense. When is it okay? When is it not, right? Use of force, those kind of things, right? So there are these generalities, right? The tip, the cutting edge, right? I mean, knives, they stab, they cut. Yeah, okay, great, fantastic. But each of those things have different variations other than maybe the law, right? Based on the type of knife, right? So are we talking about like a Marine K-bar, right? Tactical knife? Are we talking about a bayonet? Are we talking about a Bowie knife? Are we talking about a small clip knife that like I normally carry? Are we talking about, a butter knife, right? Or a cleaver that you might have in your kitchen, right? Which really points to like when we're studying the law for these things, right? One of the advantages of training yourself for knife as opposed to gun, and I'm not opposed to either one, right? They all have their advantages and disadvantages. But with a knife, I don't need nearly as much training to cause damage to somebody, right? Because I don't have to line up a tube with a specific hole and keep it in the right place, right? I mean, as long as that edge or that point impacts this body, it's going to do damage, right? But when it comes to legal kind of things, right? Knives are always going to be less regulated than guns, always, right? Regardless of Second Amendment and those kind of things. And this class is not about those kind of things, especially for those of you in the U.S., right? Because most of the world they don't have any protections like we have with that kind of thing. So, but think about it, right? Whether you're allowed to carry a knife onto an airplane or public transportation or not has no bearing as to whether or not you're going to be able to find or create a sharpened something, whether it's or something that's close enough that can be used. Credit, debit card, broken piece of glass, your butter knife from the meal that they served you that accidentally on purpose fell into the pouch on the seat in front of you that you'll give back just before landing and all that kind of stuff, right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Burn the video if things get in that direction. But they're always going to be less regulated, right? Every household has at least 10 of them, right, in the kitchen, right? Between butter knives, which cut very, very differently, right, than a steak knife that cuts differently from a butcher knife or a cleaver or whatever, right? All of these things are different. Handle sizes, all those kind of things, right? They're all considerations, right? But this is about understanding it and knowing it. If there's one that you carry on a regular basis, right, knowing it really, really well. Sheathed, unsheathed, pocket folders, they don't have sheaths, right? But a folder, right, when it's closed, okay? Now, for all intents and purposes, if you can't get that open under pressure, you at least have something that's Yawara stick or Kubotan like, right? So are you doing Yawara stick Kubotan training as an add-on to this kind of thing, so that, right, it's only a knife if I can get it to stab or cut, right? But just because it's a knife doesn't mean I have to stab or cut. Okay. So familiarization with the weapon, right? What can I do with it, right? And how well, right? But it's about playing around with those things. If we were talking about like handgun defense, right? Two of the least practiced skills for people that work with that kind of stuff is drawing and reloading under pressure. Same thing with a knife. People get out in the dojo and they're, or self-defense class, and they're practicing knife defense. They're practicing using one. They might even get out and do some cutting practice and all that, right? But rarely does anyone practice drawing it out of the sheath or getting it off the pocket or whatever and getting it open and out there under pressure, right? And practicing that, not until you get it right, but until you can't get it wrong, okay? So this is all about understanding the weapon. Grips, grip change, right? Being able, I didn't have the forethought to make sure I had a training knife with me. You know what? Don't need to worry about a training knife, right? We'll just pull one of the things that my guys made me, right? So grips, and why a ninja holds the weapon this way, which looks wrong to most people, right? As opposed to holding it this way, right? Different types of cutting actions or cutting direction, just basics, right? Grip changes, right? Being able to go from a foregrip to a reverse grip, very, very easy, even if I'm not using my hands, right? Being able to shift things, move, use my body, right? Different parts of my body to make it happen, right? So you get the idea, right? With a grip change, being able to change things, right? Not letting go in a fight. How do I hold it so that I can easily move from one to the next without cutting myself up? Those kind of things, right? So how do I do that? Or is it even on the list or not on the list, right? What can I do with this thing? What can I do with certain types of knives that I can't do with others? What's the cutting dynamics of certain knives over others? And that actually starts to move into other areas that I need to focus on more, right? So get this thing back here again, right? So familiarization. Again, 2, 3, and 4, this is not a hierarchy, right? This is important, right? Knowing that when I pick up a weapon, right? When I pick up a knife, the first thing I need to do is find the balance, right? Where it's balanced, because now I know whether it's going to be blade heavy, where the balance is, whatever. Just like picking up a stick, just like picking up a sword, right? So I can use it as a natural extension of my body to do different things with it, right? Okay. So, just again, different things with it, right? So that leads us into what I'm going to call shadow boxing, right? I know we're not boxing. We have a knife, right? But it's moving it around, right? Getting out, moving my body, doing different things, right? Working it in coordination with my body. And then, if I don't have a training partner, I can visualize somebody coming at me. So how I would move the weapon for, cutting kind of things, for stabbing, for striking, right? With the edge, right? And just kind of moving things around and practicing to move it so it always stays in guard position. So when this guy comes in, all I have to do is avoid, and that edge is going to find them, that kind of thing, right? But it's just being comfortable, moving it around, drawing, resheathing, that kind of thing, right? And again, using it in the sheath, out of the sheath. If it's a clip knife, again, if it's closed, then I'm doing Kubotan training. So any given area of training affects other areas of training and expands our flexibility and adaptability and proficiency in given situations, right? In the beginning, maybe your technique is in what I call, they're compartmentalized, right? So I'm doing knife defense, I'm doing gun defense, I'm doing stick fighting, I'm doing whatever. But eventually, if you stick with it long enough and you start to pull out the principles and concepts that hold everything together and recognize, right? A sheathed sword is a short stick. Till it comes out and the blade is live, it's a curved hanbo, right? Or a straight hanbo, depending on or what kind of sword you're using, right? If I am, like I said, with clip knife closed, right? It's a Kubotan, it's a Yawara. I don't have to think about those things. I know what the object is in my hand, And instinctively, I use it like that thing. I don't wish that we're open. Nothing. I use what I have because that's what I have, right? But this is just kind of moving around and being very familiar with it, right? Being able to like I said, do the grip changes, shift, right? Grips so that you're not baby grabbing things under pressure, doing things at different times and in different environments, right? August, where I live, is hot and humid. So what types of grips, right, are going to stick to my hand? What types of grips are going to slide around because of sweaty palms, right? It doesn't mean I have one or not have one. It means that I train enough so the one I have in my hand, I know. I know the dynamics of this thing. I know how it's going to affect grip. I know how different types of training, gloves, not gloves, whatever is going to affect how I can hold on to this thing, how I can move, that kind of thing, different types of clothing, right? All those kind of things, right? Okay. So another one then is cutting. I'm going to do cutting practice, okay? Whether I take newsprint and roll it up and bind it and soak it in water, wring that out or whatever, and hang it so I can do cutting practice at it and recognize that, I want to get some bite on that boshi, right, to cut into these things. Or I fill up old soft drink bottles or water bottles or whatever. They're just little, 16 ounce, what are they, 500 milliliter, something like that, right? These just the little bottles, right? Fill them up with water, cap it off, put it on a stand, and practice, boom, getting these cuts so I'm not baseball batting or cricketing. I know fancy words I come up with, right? To knock this thing away, but I haven't done anything to the surface, right? Because I haven't practiced getting the edge aligned with the cutting surface, right? Same thing with stabbing, right? Those kind of things, right? And understanding different cutting dynamics with different types of knives, okay? And then 4 is practical application. This is that one pillar, right? Remember that one picture I had with the roof, but it only had one pillar? This is what 99.8% of students do 99.9% of the time. Practical application. The problem with practical application, it's good, right? Because you can fit in with a partner. You get that warm and fuzzy feeling because you're locking them up or you're doing things and simulating killing people and all that. But the one thing you can't do with this is open up your training partner. You can't work on cutting dynamics and debilitating cuts, stabs, those kind of things on a live partner. You can mock at it. One of the things that we do is we'll take our wooden training knives or Lexan or whatever we have, right? And take this big sidewalk chalk kind of stuff, right? And chalk the edge, right? So then when we're training, right, we can see whether there's a straight cut, right, on the uniform, or if it's this like wide kind of thing, right? Which means that may have skimmed some flesh off. It may have filleted, right? But it's not a streamlined, easy cut, right? Just a little thing. There's certain things you can't do, right? You can try creative kind of things and whatnot just to be able to float around and adapt with your body and whatnot. But each of these things has very specific things that it gives you and very specific things that it helps add as an aspect, right? I learned this from my Mikyo instructor or my Mikyo teacher, but this applies to what we're doing as well, okay? When we look at our training, we want to look at it like it's a gemstone, okay? Diamond, emerald, whatever, right? By the time we see these things, they're not fresh out of the earth, right? A jeweler has already processed these things and cut them and whatnot, right? So we end up, just do something simple like, I don't know, my wife would tell me what the cut is. Doesn't really matter, right, to me, okay? But what we have is a certain cut to it, right? A certain shape, right? But each of these sides is called a facet, okay? And depending on the way this is aligned between a light source and my eyes, depends on which side glitters or flashes, right? And gets our attention. They're all part of the same gemstone, but each one is a face of it, a facet, right? And that's what we're looking at, okay? Each one of these things is a facet or a face or an aspect of overall knife training, okay? If we're missing one, we can still do well, but not as easily. Like that, conversation I had with that teacher at the school today, right? Just not as easily as we could if we had all these facets going, right? So we got these 4, right? I'm going to give you 2 more, right? Because with weapons training, we always have the base 4 pillars for training. They get adjusted for the weapon that we're dealing with, but we're going to add 2 more pillars to the Parthenon or to the gazebo or the pagoda or whatever. Okay, so we're going to add 2 more. These are your bonuses today, right? I know the title said 4. Pardon me, you're going to get 6, right? So these, right, have to do with the fact that the weapon is not attached to our body. We want to use it like it's an extension of our body. We want to hold it, grip it, those kind of things, as though it works like every other part of my limb as I move it, right? Which is why I always cringe when I see these martial arts magazines or training videos or whatever, and somebody's holding the handle of a sword, right? Especially a Japanese sword, right? Like it's a damn baseball bat, right? It just tells me they know squat, they've gassed, or they train with somebody who knew less than them, right? Just a bunch of shit, okay? But ultimately, it's not attached other than through grip, right? So the other aspects are in weapon retention, right? How do I hold on to this damn thing? How do I hold on to it when I'm cutting? When that thing bites in, right? Also with cutting dynamics, right? How do I cut into a torso of a body or stab? Knowing that the ribs adjust or whatever. The blade could glance, the ribs could open up, right? And this thing could get stuck, right? And then I could end up losing my weapon because it's stuck in him, right? Sweat, mud, blood, whatever, right? Okay, I can't hold on to it. I can't get my weapon back, so now I've effectively lost it, and here comes somebody else, okay? So, how do I do that so that I don't have that problem? How do I do that understanding, right? How the body works and all that, right? So when I'm applying effective cuts, it's separating things so that he can't operate. I'm not just, like the hacker slasher psycho movie kind of thing. I'm just trying to put as many holes in the person as possible. Not a bad tactic, not mastery. So that my own skill set or lack of skill set doesn't get in my way, that kind of thing. And then the other one is weapon disarms. How do I take a knife away from somebody else? How do I effectively disarm them without getting myself cut up? Okay. I just saw a video that somebody sent to me a couple of days ago. And what they said was, oh, this looks like something that we would do with our style of martial art. And it wasn't horrible. I almost said bad. It wasn't horrible, right? But as the stab came in, yes, the guy got offline and whatnot, but he went to grab right for the hand to go right to the wrist lock. I would never do that, right? We parry in, we snag. If it falls into my hand, great. If not, there's other things that we can do. But I never reach out for the hand, and his timing was way off, okay? So he's getting out of the way, blade's coming in, right? And he's doing it, but no attacker is going to let you do these techniques. No one's going to let you do these things. And if he sees you move, we can't discount flinch response. So if he's doing his thing and I go to move to grab his hands and he flinches or at least stops, and I grab the blade and now he's pulling back or he pulls back to retract it, and my little freaking sausages fall off on the floor, and now he's going, and okay? So reality, right? So how do I do it in a way that I'm not in my own way? Okay, 2 lessons I got from one of my teachers. One was never be an accomplice to your own ass kicking. And 2, make sure that the way you're training is not just about skills, not just about doing cool moves, but you're training in a way that makes him be an accomplice to his. Okay, it's very different, right? Okay, so what we actually have is 6 pillars, right? So we have familiarization, weapon familiarization, knowing not just my favorite one, because what if I don't have that? What if I disarm this person and now I've got his? I was unarmed originally, last week's training, right? Unarmed against a knife-wielding person. I get out of the way, I disarm him, right? Maybe I knock him out and his friend starts coming back in here, right? So I've never held this one before. I might have held one like it or whatever, but how do I very, very quickly, intuitively, instinctively, right? Find the balance, know where the edge is, correct grip, that kind of thing, right? And I can press this into action. And depending on whether it's sharp or dull as crap or whatever, right? Because I pulled this one made by one of my students, and it's sharp, but we also have things in a dojo that it's in Yaito, right? This is designed, I mean, it's very, very thin and I can cut with it, but it doesn't have a typical edge on it, right? Point's still a point, right? Boshi's still a boshi, but this is not, it's supposed to be safe, right? It doesn't have an edge, okay? When you really know what you're doing, you can take something like this and cut somebody with it, right? But what if what I just took away from this guy is it's duller than crap, okay? How do I use that in a way that's effective, right? How do I comply with the law? This guy's unarmed, but I happen to have a knife in my hand, or I pulled one to dissuade him, and he's now coming in at me. I got to tell you, you may use these cliches that I'd rather be tried by a jury of 12 than carried by a group of 6, but I promise you, that may not be the better option of 2 really bad options, right? Because I don't only have to defend myself against this person who's trying to kill me, I also have to defend against the perceptions of witnesses, and I have to defend against the legal system that's supposed to be there to protect me. So there's a whole lot more to self-protection than most people give anything other than maybe lip service to, okay? So we need to be careful. So what we're going to do, I'm going to segue here because I have a few more minutes. What I want to do is I want to jump into an aspect here that I covered in familiarization, okay? And really understanding the weapon so that I have more skill than the average person, including somebody that might be coming at me, right? I'm going to be using the weapon in a way that psychologically will jump on him, right? So hopefully you're seeing the psychology of all this in that I need to think about it differently than the way the average person thinks about it. If I think about self-protection, if I think about fighting, anything, the same way whoever's going to be coming at me thinks about it, then I don't have an advantage. He's probably going to have seen everything that I'm doing. He's going to have defenses for it if he has any kind of experience or whatever. I don't play the lottery because I don't bet against the odds, right? Well, maybe I'll win. If I win, I'll win big. The street is not the place to have that kind of mentality. All right. So let's switch this out. We're going to do a dive into just pillar number 1. I mentioned things, so if you came on late, you're going to have to rewind it and listen to some of the things that I threw in there that are in pillar 1. But I want to take a look at one thing, one aspect in here, because remember, this is a big picture kind of, or a big viewpoint kind of thing. So we've got just these titles, but in each one of these things, there's a lot going on. Okay, I know everybody wants quick and easy, right? Everybody wants tricky. Everybody wants deadly. Show me some cool moves, right? For those of you who are on live, right, you know that I'm doing this live. For those of you watching the recording, you may or may not know that I did this or that I'm doing these things as live broadcasts. So the cool thing is there's this little spot on my screen where I can see people signing in and signing off. And there's a bunch of folks that sign in and they're gone within seconds because I'm betting that they signed on to be entertained by some cool, tricky moves, not to actually learn anything, but they want to see how I would do things. They want to sit on their ass and watch a screen and call that learning. When the reality is there's a whole shit ton of stuff behind each one of those moves. Why I would do it, when I would do it, against who, right? And I'm not doing this, I call it mathematical martial arts. 1 + 1 always equals 2. Okay. Except again, if I don't have my clip knife and I happen to be in the kitchen, somebody breaks into my house, comes charging at me, and I'm near the silverware drawer or I'm near the cutting block with our cooking utensils and whatnot, depending on whether I grab a butter knife or I grab a paring knife or a steak knife or whatever, right? Bread knife, right? All these things. I better know right away what I'm able to do with that thing, because a bread knife, the cuts are sawing motions. A paring knife, very light. Depth of cut, going to be very, very different. Steak knife, dragging, tearing cuts, very, very different, right? Very different. Okay, so let's do this. Let's draw one type of knife so we can do the lesson, right? Again, you have to put up with my crappy writing, drawing, all that kind of stuff, right? Okay, so knife, Bowie knife, kind of a K-bar. I guess I made it more of a Bowie knife this time than anything else, or a Bowie, whatever. Okay, so can I use effectively against an attacker who's coming at me? Given that I may have certain legal restraints, I may have certain considerations, going on, right? Restrictions based on job, whatever, right? If I'm law enforcement, I'm going to have certain use of force things, and I'm going to be more restricted than I am if I were a military combatant on a battlefield or the everyday defender, right? So different things, right? Different things going on. Okay. So let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. Let's get the given things out, right? So also, this is a single-edged knife. I think I mentioned that last time. Knowing, again, weapon familiarization, right? Double-edged knives. I've got my Spyderco knife that I carry is straight for about a third to half the blade, and then the tail end of it is serrated, right? It's very different. I tend to lead towards single-edged knives because they afford me more flexibility, more legal protection as well, because the more something is, double-edged, very slim, whatever, right? The less easy it is for you to write that off as a box cutter or whatever, right? Like you'd never find me carrying around a karambit, right? These little talon-looking kind of blades and whatnot, because there's only one design. There's only one use for those kind of blades, right? I don't care what anybody says. Can you use it as a box cutter? Yeah, but that's the exception as opposed to, my little clip knife, right? That is a utility kind of thing, but I could use it for self-defense. I've chosen it based on certain parameters and certain considerations, right? And while a lot of people would say, you spent $120 for that knife, hell, I can get the same kind of thing at Walmart for $10. No, you can't. Quality's different. The shape of the thing that you're using to open the blade and all that, that's different. Where the safety catch is, right, is in a different place. And I chose mine so that he can't do what a lot of these knife guys have learned to do, where they shift out of the way and they'll flick the safety catch and close your blade on your fingers. They can't get to mine because mine's under the palm of my hand. They can't get to it. It's always either under my fingers in reverse grip or under the meat of my hand, so they can't access it. So, right? But this all comes down to the way you think about the problem and what you might run into, right? So let's get the elephant out of the room, right? Got the tip, right? We can stab with it, right? And then we have the kisaki, the edge of it, for cutting. But what else, right? So let's just do this very, very quickly, and let's see how many working parts of a weapon, of a knife, we can come up with, okay? The spine. Again, why I don't use double-edged knives, because I'm limited to cutting, stabbing, a little bit of these other things. But with a spine, I can strike with it, I can catch with it, because if you catch with a blade, with an edge, any kind of movement across that edge slices the meat open, and now I'm not holding them anymore. If I want to trap, if I want to be able to do arm bars and all that kind of stuff, right? I want this piece that I don't have to let go, and I can still catch them with it, right? D, the side of the blade, right? I can slap, right, and parry with it and not have to worry. So if I'm worried about legality and use of force and all that, I may not be able to or want to stab or cut. So I better be able to strike or slap, right? If there's a handguard, right, this Shisaya blade, right, the average weapon, okay? Some knives, my clip knife doesn't have that. My K-bar does, okay, slightly. A Bowie knife has a bigger one, right? So depending on what you have, right? So being able to use this, right, for pinching, striking, scraping, that kind of thing, right? The butt of the weapon, right? For hammering, those kind of things, right? The handle, okay? Because I may be holding it down here, right? I may have been sharpening it, whatever. I may have held it. I may have just disarmed this guy, and there's a way to use your hand so that you can grab this way, disarm it, but now he's coming right back at me, and I didn't have time to fumble around and get it back into normal position, right? So I can clock his ass with the handle of it, right? So all these things. Am I training for these? I know my answer, right? Are you training for these? Okay. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is that it? No. What about the sheath? Okay. So if it's sheathed, I just eliminated these two. Okay. But what's the sheath made from? If it's rounded and smooth, right, I'm going to get a different effect or a different, ideas for using this than if I have like a leather sheath or whatever where it's stitched and sewn and there's a rough edge. I can do more scraping with that, right? I can slap with it. I can detach the leather kind of thing. If there's a strap around it, I can detach it and flick the knife, right? And practice throwing this off the blade at his face and then be chasing in afterwards or running, whatever, right? So it could be a projectile weapon. It could be where I've pulled this and I've got the sheath in one hand, blade in the other, right? So I was just having a student practice this today, right? They've got the short sword out of the weapon, right? Or out of the belt, right? And so we're moving into a position where I've got this for striking and using it like a stick, and then this is in position for other things, right? So again, how am I thinking about this? Okay. So how many different parts of the weapon? How many are we practicing with, right? That's going to be different. Again, if this is a butter knife, right? And there's like this serration to it, depending on what you have, it's going to be different. If it's a steak knife, it's going to be different. If it's more like a butcher knife, vegetable, whatever, right? All these things have different cutting dynamics, okay? So what do I know about it, okay? All right, so that's what I have for today. Again, big picture view, just one of these things, right? Be mindful of what you're doing and don't just take something at surface level. The way you think about any aspect of your training is going to control, for good or bad, how far you take your training, right? And into what areas, right? So as soon as whatever that perspective is, okay, it's a trap. It immediately creates a limitation, okay? Even mine, it creates a limitation. But where's the limits? And where is that relative to somebody else's? Okay. So again, just like all of our weeks, this Friday, if you want to get in on this, we have these Friday virtual classes. There's the URL to sign up, right? $4.99, $4.99 for a 75 to 90 minute class. And what we're going to do is we're going to be taking a look at some of these things that we worked with, but more what we're going to be focusing on is doing a deep dive into the flexibility of the knife and how to do things. Right? Yes, we're going to do some stabbing. Yes, we're going to do some cutting and all that. But how do we trap? How do we use the knife in different ways? We're going to be going into this grip change and how to do it, those kind of things, right? And playing around with more adaptive defense, right? Again, taking into consideration laws and perceptions, right? Because again, in every realm of self-defense, if you're not considering the perceptions of your family members who love you and know that you train, know they feel safe because you can protect them, right? If you don't know and you're not clear on the fact that they watch you open up somebody or end that person's life, part of their brain can know that you did it for all the right reasons and that you saved their life. But some of the people in your life, part of their brain is going to be focusing on the fact that they never realized or they would never allow themselves to believe that you had such a demon or monster inside of yourself that you could unleash long enough to do what you just did. And that will change family dynamics just like that. Okay. Again, all of these things are really, really important. Okay. So think about it. And as usual, right? If I can help you out, right? Again, there has to be a good fit, that kind of thing. I don't take everybody, but you can jump on this thing for $4.99. It's the cheapest you're ever going to work with me. But if you want to go farther into your training and we decide together that we might be able to help, great. I'm all for it, right? If you want to do that, you can always shoot me an email at Warrior C, WARRIOR, the letter C, at warrior-concepts-online.com. Should I write it on here just so it's on the video? Warrior, I'll try to write more legibly, right? Warrior C at Warrior Concepts with an S dash online. I know it's long. Trust me, if you're too lazy to write that out or type that out, we're not going to be a good fit teacher student. It's just the way it is. Okay? .com. Right? In the subject line, write the words call request. Tell me a little bit about yourself, what your training is, what your goals are like, where you think you need the help, and I'll respond to you and whatnot. If that seems like a good fit up front, then we'll talk about some dates or times or whatever that we could hop on the phone. And I don't push anybody to any kind of training, right? It's going to be all helping, right? If it works, it works. If it doesn't, no harm, no foul. You will at least walk away with a plan of action for your training moving forward. Okay. So that being said, that's the well, I guess it turned into 6 pillars, right? And taking a look at the flexibility and using a knife instead of just limiting yourself to only stabbing, only cutting, right? And there's a whole bunch of other stuff too with it, right? But again, if I can help you out, Warrior C at warriorconceptsonline.com. I'd love to help you out, but only if it's going to be a fit. Okay. That's up to you. Hopefully I'll see you on the Friday call. If you click on that, you can go over, you can get yourself registered for it now and, be virtual, right? Just, we'll do it through the Zoom call. You can ask some questions during the class and all that. If not, no harm, no foul, right? That's it. I got to go. I got classes starting in 9.5 minutes. So I got to go. I'll talk to you again soon. Be safe, train hard. And if you again, need any help, reach out.